Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I was raised to believe we were equals, me and my brother Mason, that we stood on the same ground, the same footing, built from the same sweat and drywall our dad used to patch up the world around us. But I should have noticed the cracks in that illusion way earlier than I did. Should have seen it in the little things. When Mason forgot his lunch, Dad drove it to his school 3 towns over. When I forgot mine, I got a lecture about personal responsibility and a peanut butter sandwich from the nurse's office. It was always that kind of difference, nothing loud, never obvious, just these quiet, brutal decisions that added up over the years like unpaid debts. But the hammer didn't really come down until I asked for help. I wasn't looking for much. Just a bit of relief after college. I'd graduated with honors, busted my ass for 4 years, picked up part-time jobs between classes, skipped spring breaks, and did summer internships unpaid because, apparently, exposure is a currency now. All of it to climb some invisible ladder that was supposed to lead somewhere. And when I got to the top, or at least what I thought was the top, I found myself looking down at a mountain of student debt and a job market that felt more like a thrift store clearance bin than a career path. So I called my dad. I was 26, still trying to prove I didn't need anything, but my pride had cracked enough to let a little vulnerability in. I remember sitting in the kitchen of my crummy apartment, the one with the broken dishwasher that smelled like moldy pasta water, staring at my phone like it owed me courage. When I finally got him on the line, I explained the situation, told him I was managing, but barely. I asked for a loan, not a gift, not a handout. Just a few thousand to help me breathe. Told him I'd pay him back with interest, even. He was silent for a long time. Then he laughed. He actually laughed. "Rachel," he said, in that tone that always came wrapped in something smug and sticky, "you're an adult now. Time to handle your own damn expenses." I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, but because I was too stunned to speak. I think, somewhere inside, I'd expected him to at least pretend to consider it. But no, he'd made his point. I was an adult. Adults handle things. Adults don't ask daddy for help when the bills stack up like bodies in a war zone. I said, "Okay, got it," and hung up. Then I cried in the bathroom with the water running, because even my own tears felt like they needed to be muffled. Fast forward 3 weeks. I'm scrolling on my lunch break, another soulless turkey sandwich at my desk, when I see Mason's name pop up on Instagram. Big surprise, the caption screams. The video starts with a shaky shot of Mason in sunglasses and a leather jacket, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Behind him is a goddamn mountain house. Not a cabin. Not a shack. A full-blown 3-bedroom lodge with cedar siding, a stone fireplace, and a hot tub on the deck. Dad really outdid himself, Mason says to the camera. He said I needed a fresh start. Guess this is it. I nearly dropped my phone into my cup of instant soup. I watched the video again. And again. And again. Each time felt like swallowing broken glass, slow and sharp and impossible to forget. I waited for a joke at the end. Some kind of "just kidding," or "this is an Airbnb," or anything to soften the blow. But no, it was real. My father, the same man who told me to handle my own life, had gifted Mason an entire mountain house fully furnished and move-in ready. I went home that night and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a birthday that never felt worth celebrating. I sat on my couch, a hand-me-down with ripped seams and sun-bleached arms, and stared at the video like it owed me answers. What the hell did Mason do that I didn't? I thought back. Had he ever worked as hard as I had? Hell no. Mason dropped out of college his sophomore year to find himself, which apparently required surfing in Costa Rica and spending 6 months in a yurt in Arizona. He came home with a half-finished tattoo and a blog about healing through crystal therapy. Dad said he was just exploring. When I got a C+ in organic chemistry, Dad said I was slacking and needed to tighten up. And now this? A house? My hands shook as I typed out the message. Just one word. Why? Sent it. Waited. 3 minutes later, he replied. Just a thumbs up. That stupid, yellow, smug little thumbs up. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I bit down on my lip hard enough to taste metal and tried not to throw my phone across the room. You ever have a moment where something inside you quietly dies? That was mine. There's a very particular kind of ache that settles into your chest when you realize that something wasn't a one-time oversight, but a pattern, a long, winding stretch of repeated choices that someone you loved made over and over again, right in front of your face, while you tried to convince yourself it didn't mean what it obviously meant. I used to think my dad loved me and Mason the same, just in different ways. That lie worked fine when I was 10 and still waiting for him to show up at my school play with a bouquet of gas station flowers and a grin that said, "Sorry, work ran late, but I made it." He never came. Not that year. Not the next either. It always seemed like something came up, a work emergency, a client dinner, or Mason needing him for something important. That was the word he used every damn time, important. As if what I needed was never that. I remember being 8 and sitting by the window with my cheap plastic tiara on, waiting for him to come take me to my own birthday dinner. Mom had made lasagna, put candles in a frozen cake, and said he'd be late but would show up. He never did. Mason had a fever. Apparently, that was the emergency. I told myself it was okay. He'd make it up to me. And then I told myself that again at 13. And again at 17. By the time I hit my 20s, the blindfold should have come off, but I kept it on like a badge of honor. Like if I just kept proving I was strong enough, capable enough, maybe then he'd finally give me the kind of attention he gave Mason by default. I was working double shifts, putting myself through grad school and living in an apartment so cold in winter I had to sleep with 2 coats on. Meanwhile, Mason was living in the guest house back home rent-free, talking about launching a podcast about spirituality and breathwork, which lasted exactly 3 episodes before he decided he was more of an idea guy than a follow-through kind of guy. Dad said Mason needed a little extra time to get on his feet. That was 5 years ago. Back then, I paid rent, utilities, car insurance, gas, groceries, Wi-Fi, and even helped cover some of Mom's medical bills when she had that scare with her heart. I calculated once how much I spent just supporting myself since I was 22. Must be close to $35,000 a month over 4 years. Wait, no, I mean, whatever, a ton. You get the point. The math doesn't even matter anymore. The emotional math is what stings. I gave everything I had, and somehow it still wasn't enough to earn what Mason got just for existing. That's what hit me hardest. Maybe it was never about me falling short. Maybe I was just never the one he was betting on in the first place. Maybe he saw me as the one who'd be fine no matter what. The strong one. The one who didn't need anything, which sounds like a compliment until you realize it's just another way of saying you're not worth the effort. I used to think Mason was the baby, the soft one who needed coddling. But maybe the truth was worse. Maybe I was just the backup plan. The spare tire. Reliable, durable, and absolutely taken for granted. Thanksgiving came around like it always did, awkward, heavy, and full of forced laughter. Mom had gone full Martha Stewart again, making a whole spread like we were still a family that did that kind of thing. She asked me to go grab a table runner from Dad's office. I hadn't been in there in years, not since he started treating it like his little man cave kingdom. But I went because that's what I always did. I followed instructions. I did the thing nobody else wanted to do. I found the table runner stuffed in the back of a dusty drawer that smelled like aftershave and old printer ink. But right above it, like something placed there on purpose or maybe forgotten in a moment of arrogance, was a stack of manila envelopes. Legal-sized. Bound with rubber bands that had dried out and snapped like brittle twigs. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. Maybe because something in me already knew what I'd find. I opened one, slowly, like it might bite. It was a notarized document. Real official stuff. Stamped, signed, witnessed. The kind of thing that decides who gets what when someone dies. And right there, bold as daylight, was a name I recognized. Mine, Rachel, and more. Only it had a line slashed through it, sharp and deliberate, like someone had taken real care to make sure it wasn't just an edit, it was a message. Below it, in different ink, was Mason's name. No crossing out. No second guesses. I stood there for a long time, holding that paper like it might catch fire, trying to figure out which version of me my father had erased. The daughter, the adult, the afterthought. Maybe all of them. And still, some small, stupid part of me hoped there was a good reason. I wish I could say I walked out of that room angry. That I stormed into dinner, slammed the papers on the table, and demanded an explanation. But I didn't. I folded the document back up, slid it into my purse like contraband, and went back upstairs to eat turkey with the people who pretended everything was fine. Because I wanted to hear it from him directly. I wanted to know what made me worth crossing out. Some people think the truth is like a light bulb, something you flip on in a dark room, and suddenly everything's clear. But it's not like that, not really. Truth, real truth, is like a leak behind drywall. You don't notice it until the paint bubbles or the floor warps, and by the time you start to peel it back, it's already done the damage. That document in my purse, the one I'd found by accident or maybe fate, was one of those slow leaks. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop wondering what the hell it meant. Did my grandfather really intend to give Mason the house? Or was this another quiet rewrite of my existence? I waited until the day after Thanksgiving when the dust had settled, the guests had gone, and the house had returned to its usual hush. Mom was cleaning leftovers, humming some old Stevie Nicks song, and Dad was upstairs in his office probably Googling antique shotguns or pretending to answer emails. I took the document to a friend of mine, Lorna, who worked in a probate office. She was sharp, no nonsense, the kind of woman who could smell bullshit from 3 zip codes away. I told her I found it in some old family papers and asked her what she made of it. She read it in silence, then looked up at me like I'd just handed her a grenade. "Rachel," she said slowly, tapping the page with her pen, "this is a copy of your grandfather's original will. It was filed and notarized over a decade ago. According to this, the mountain property, parcel 284-719, was left to you. Not to your father. Not to Mason. To you. Full ownership. No contingencies." I asked her if there was any way it could have been changed. Maybe my grandfather had a change of heart later on, updated the will, signed new papers. People do that, right? Change their minds. She nodded, sure, it was possible. But if there was a new will, it wasn't with the county, and nothing was officially recorded in the last decade. "If this is the most recent legal document," she said, "then it's yours. Or at least it should have been." I walked out of her office with my heart thudding like it was trying to break out of my chest. My head kept spinning, flipping back through years of conversations, moments I'd ignored. That one time Dad mentioned the property had been a lot of work to claim and how the legal stuff took longer than expected. At the time, I thought he meant paperwork. Now I realized he might have meant rewriting history. I didn't go home. Not right away. I drove to Mason's place, the house I should have been living in, the one I'd watched in that ridiculous Instagram video like a stranger peeking through a locked window. He wasn't expecting me, which made it better. I knocked twice and let myself in without waiting. The place smelled like pine-scented candles and overpriced leather, like someone trying too hard to prove they belonged in luxury. Mason was lounging on the couch in joggers and a hoodie, scrolling through his phone like the world owed him entertainment. He looked up, surprised but not bothered. "Rach," he said, grinning, "what brings you to the wilderness?" I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I pulled the folded document out of my coat pocket and dropped it on the coffee table like a dead fish. His smile barely twitched. He glanced down, then back up at me. "You've seen it," he said, like it was nothing more than a weather report. I asked him if he knew. Not just now, not recently, but before. Did he know years ago that Grandpa left it to me? He scratched his neck and let out this lazy little laugh, the kind that made my skin crawl. "Yeah," he said, Dad mentioned it. Said Grandpa had some old-school ideas about you needing security. But Dad figured you wouldn't want it. Said you were too independent for a cabin in the woods. You'd get bored. I stared at him, trying to decide if he was being cruel or if he genuinely believed what he was saying. Either way, the sting was the same. All those years of trying to be good, strong, low maintenance, and this was what it got me. Labeled too independent for a home I didn't even know was mine. I didn't scream. I didn't flip a table or slap him across the face like in a soap opera. I just turned around and walked back to my car, shaking so badly I could barely get the keys in the ignition. On the way back to the house, something cracked open in me. Not sadness. Not disappointment. Not even betrayal. Rage. Cold, patient, focused rage. When I got home, Dad was sitting in the den, sipping his favorite whiskey, a $60 bottle he kept hidden behind the books in the living room like a smug little treasure. I went upstairs, found the identical decanter in the liquor cabinet, and poured out every last drop into the sink. Then I replaced it with the cheapest crap I could find at the local gas station. Something syrupy and offensive, guaranteed to burn on the way down. I cleaned the bottle, resealed it, and put it back exactly where it had been. That night at dinner, he poured himself a glass and took a sip. I watched his face twitch, just slightly, before he set it down and said nothing. I smiled at my plate and kept chewing my overcooked green beans like nothing happened. Later, as I grabbed my coat to leave, he asked where I was going. Back to the city, I said, without looking at him. You didn't say goodbye, he said, like it mattered. I turned in the doorway, met his eyes, and said it slowly so he'd remember every word. You didn't raise an adult, Dad. You raised someone who can outsmart you. Then I walked out into the night, the air crisp against my face, and thought for the first time in a long while that maybe I was done asking for anything at all. Maybe it was time to start taking. There's a point where anger cools into something sharper than rage, a kind of clarity that doesn't shake or burn, just focuses like the edge of a knife sliding across soft skin. After I switched the whiskey, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. If anything, it felt like I'd stepped into a different version of myself, one that wasn't waiting around anymore to be chosen, to be loved, to be seen. So when I got back to the city, I called Naomi, a lawyer I knew from undergrad who specialized in property law, with the kind of cold brilliance that made grown men stutter when she asked questions in court. I trusted her because she had no patience for bullshit, and that was exactly what I needed. I didn't give her the full emotional breakdown, just told her I needed her to look into the title records for a property, gave her the address of the mountain house, and waited while she worked her magic. 2 days later, she called me back, her voice flat and unreadable, which told me whatever she'd found wasn't simple. I checked county records, she said, and you're not going to like this, or maybe you will, depending on what you're hoping to find. The house was never transferred to your father. Not legally, anyway. The deed still lists your grandfather, Harold J. Moore, as the sole owner of record. And here's where it gets interesting. There's a survivorship clause in the will. Standard stuff, but clear as day. Upon Harold's death, Parcel 284-719 is to pass directly to the named heir, which is you, Rachel. No caveats. No conditions. If it was supposed to go to Mason, they would have had to file a codicil or a new will. But there's nothing. No record, no sale, no transfer. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ugly carpet I'd been meaning to replace for 2 years, my fingers digging into the comforter like it could hold me upright. I asked her if Mason had any legal claim. She gave a soft chuckle, not cruel, just amused at the absurdity of it all. Not unless he plans to challenge the will, she said, and he'd lose unless he's got documents no one knows about. The house isn't his. Not legally. He's squatting in your inheritance. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call Mason or Dad or even Mom. I sat in silence and made a plan. A clear, clean, razor-edged plan. I waited until the next weekend. I knew Mason would be out of town at some stupid ayahuasca retreat he'd been bragging about on social media. Something about self-healing and unlocking his third chakra, whatever that meant. I packed my car with gloves, garbage bags, and an old crowbar I'd never thought I'd use for anything beyond scaring off raccoons. When I arrived at the cabin, I took a long breath before stepping inside. The place was just as fake as the man pretending to own it, all curated throw blankets, overpriced rustic art, and live, laugh, love carved into driftwood. I walked through every room slowly, taking everything that was legally mine. The grandfather clock that used to stand in my childhood living room, into the trunk. The photo albums from the basement storage, packed and sealed. The vintage dishes Grandma had once promised me, still in the same china cabinet, wrapped in towels and gently boxed. I didn't take everything, just the things that mattered. The rest I treated like garbage. I dumped condiments in the sink, flipped over furniture, tore the mattress open with a kitchen knife, and unplugged the fridge so the food would rot in a couple of days. Before I left, I pulled a sticky note from my purse, wrote in big black letters, "Congratulations on your fake house. You might want to call Dad," and slapped it right on the fridge door. I didn't wait around for the fallout. I drove off as the sun dipped behind the hills, the sky burning orange like something divine and dangerous, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I made it home just after midnight and collapsed onto my bed, shoes still on, heart still pounding. I was half asleep when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I thought about ignoring it, but something told me to look. One new voicemail. From Dad. I stared at the screen for a full minute before pressing play. His voice came through soft and unfamiliar, like a man who'd been shouting for decades and finally lost the strength to pretend he wasn't tired. "Rachel, I think we need to talk. I miss you, kiddo." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just those last 3 words, said like they were supposed to mean more than all the years of silence that came before them. I sat there, listening to the message on loop, over and over, like I was supposed to pull something redemptive out of it. But all I felt was empty. Because missing someone after you've gutted their place in your life isn't love. It's regret dressed in sentiment. And I had no intention of being someone's regret. Not anymore. The thing about hearing your father say, "I miss you," for the first time in over a decade is that it doesn't land like it should. It doesn't warm your chest, or make you cry in relief, or inspire some cinematic reconciliation scene where everything broken suddenly heals. No, when you've spent your whole life trying to be seen by someone who kept looking right through you, those 3 words don't sound like love, they sound like an afterthought. Like a souvenir picked up too late at an airport gift shop, something cheap and too easy. I sat on my bed in the dark, phone screen dimming every time the message replayed. "Rachel, I think we need to talk. I miss you, kiddo." Over and over. Same soft tone. Same pause before my name. And all I could think was, where the hell was that voice when I needed it most? I don't know what I expected to happen next. Maybe a follow-up call. Maybe a letter. Maybe even a knock on my door with an apology and an explanation, and maybe, just maybe, the kind of ownership that had always been missing. But days passed. Then a week. Nothing but silence. And silence, I've learned, is just another kind of decision. So I decided to. I called Naomi again, this time with a purpose so clear it didn't need to be spoken aloud. I told her I wanted to begin the process of legally reclaiming the mountain property since it had never been properly transferred and I was the rightful heir per the will. She didn't ask many questions. Just walked me through the steps, calm and precise. Paperwork. Filing. Notices. A small court appearance, which she handled without blinking. Within a month, the house was mine. Official. Recorded. Clean. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like justice with a hollow echo. I drove up there one last time. Not to steal things or wreck the place like before, but to look it in the eye, like facing someone who once made you cry and no longer holds that power. The air was cool, high-altitude quiet, the kind that settles into your bones and whispers things you're not sure you want to hear. I walked through the house slowly, my boots echoing on the hardwood floors Mason had probably polished to impress people who never visited. It was empty now. He'd moved out days before the paperwork went through. Left behind a broken lamp, an opened bag of quinoa, and a single sock under the couch. That felt about right. I didn't linger. I took a few photos for the listing, made notes about what needed fixing, then locked the door behind me. In the car, with my hands still trembling from cold and adrenaline, I sent my father one final text. No preamble. No goodbye. You can miss me all you want. Just don't expect me to miss you back. I didn't wait for a reply. But the story wasn't done with me yet. A week later, while sorting through the pile of mail I'd been ignoring, I found a letter in an envelope with no return address. Inside was a printout of an old email, dated 4 years earlier. The sender was Mason. The recipient, our mother. The subject line simply read about the cabin. The email was short, but every word felt like a blow to the ribs. Hey, Mom, so I talked to Dad. He said he's going to handle the deed stuff. Told me not to worry about Rachel finding out. Says she's too busy being self-sufficient to notice. Your call if you want to tell her, but I figure it's better to keep it simple. She's not exactly gonna need a cabin in the middle of nowhere. I read it twice, then 3 more times, trying to make the words mean something else. Anything else. But there it was, confirmation. Mason knew. He knew the cabin was mine, and he said nothing. Worse, he assumed I wouldn't even care. And Mom, she knew too. She'd received the email. Read it. Sat with it. And never said a word. Not once. All those years, I thought I'd just fallen through the cracks. I thought maybe Dad forgot, or that Mason was just clueless, or that Mom didn't want to get involved. But they weren't clueless. They weren't passive. They were complicit. They made a choice to keep me in the dark. They watched me struggle, work 3 jobs, skip doctor visits because I couldn't afford copays, and still kept that secret like it was some kind of family tradition. I didn't confront them. I didn't pick up the phone or send a scathing letter. I sat with the truth in silence. Let it settle like dust on old wood, irritating, itchy, impossible to fully clean. What would have been the point anyway? Nothing I said would change what they did. And nothing they said would make me believe it wasn't on purpose. So I moved forward. I listed the cabin online, priced just below market to spark quick offers. Within days, the calls rolled in, people looking for a quiet escape in the mountains, never knowing the history buried in the walls. I picked the first buyer with cash in hand and a clean background. Didn't even flinch when I signed the papers. Just smiled, shook hands, and walked away. That night, lying in bed with the hum of the city outside my window, I thought about what it meant to be missed. To be loved, yes, but more importantly, to be chosen. And I realized something ugly, something sharp enough to bleed. Maybe the truth isn't that I was forgotten. Maybe the truth is, I wasn't the daughter they wanted in the first place.